So I thought I would introduce myself. So hi, I'm KJ. I've been travelling since May last year, so that's coming up to quite a few months now. So I started on the Gold Coast, went south for like the first trip just to check everything out, make sure everything I'd done, because I built the ute and did everything myself, everything I'd done worked properly and was placed properly. So I travelled for a couple of months, came back home. I was home around August and changed everything that annoyed me, pulled everything out, rebuilt it, reorganised it, did a whole lot of things. And then I set off again in September. I went north, spent a lot of time up in Gladstone, going to the reef, a lot of time up there. That was really, really fun. And then decided to come back down when my parents were finalising the move of their house. So came back down, helped with the packing and sorting and setting everything off. And now I've set off again. I mean, there is no home on the Gold Coast anymore. Everything's gone. I have friends and stuff, but like my home, the one I knew, everything's off on its way on its new adventure. So am I. So it's really exciting. I do want to document this just because I think it would be a really fun adventure. And you know, it might be people that, I don't know, feel spoken to, about what I've done. So basically what started all of this off, so I turned 30 in last year of May and didn't have like a midlife crisis, but definitely decided I don't like where I'm working, I don't like the environment I'm in, I don't like what I'm doing, so I want to do something different, so I'm going to change it. And so I did. I quit my job, bought this car, did it all up, figured out how to wire things, and set off on my adventure. And it's been incredibly hard. It was incredibly lonely, and then I found people to travel with, and that came with its own challenges. And then I set off again on my own and realised that was better for me. And now I'm actually officially starting my full, big lap of the country. I've spent almost 10 years living in Germany. Living and studying and existing over there, and I thought it was about time that I saw my own backyard. So here I am, starting my adventure of Australia. So it can be daunting as a 30-year-old. I've got family that have houses, and I have friends that have houses, and they have all this and that, and I have my car, my camera, and my savings, and that's it. That's all I have, and I'm really excited for this next adventure. So if you're interested, please follow along. Maybe you can learn something, maybe you can share something with me. I'm always open to learning anything new, so let's see where it takes us. So I thought I'd give you a little bit more detail about how this started. So I bought the ute. I have a Mitsubishi Triton. And basically when I got it, the back canopy was empty, had this old battery in it and a really shitty old solar panel on the top, and that was it. That was all it had. So I ripped all of it out, started afresh with a plain base. So I swapped out the locks on the doors, I put in a base, put it all up, built it up, put originally a fridge and a freezer on the side, on one side. The other side was electrical and a bit of storage, and took off on my adventure. So my first big stop was in Narrabri. So went down there, visited a few friends that I'd made a couple of months prior, stayed there, visited the Rotary Club, went on a couple of hikes, went and saw Sawn Rocks, went out to the Pilliga Forest. A lot of fun. From there I headed south. I went down to Parks. Obviously I'm not going to miss one of our famous landmarks, the dish. Anyone that hasn't seen the movie, I highly recommend go have a watch. From there I went to Canberra just to visit family in Canberra. Spent a couple of days there, did a couple of the touristy things, visited Old Parliament House, New Parliament House, all the things you visit. From there I headed off to Sydney. So in Sydney I stayed with a couple of friends and experienced the area around there before I actually set off on a coastal trip. I did the entire east coast from Sydney all the way along around to the Frankston, Mornington Peninsula area. So absolutely amazing trip. One of my first stops was, of course, like the Seacliff Bridge. You can't like miss it. It's so cool. This like just road that goes around the cliffs that you can drive along and you can walk along. Love it every time I go past. So that was one of my first stops. From there, I obviously stopped at the Kiama. You have to see the blowholes, and nearby were these like geographical like rock formations that were just really, really cool because the waves came in and just went with the water. Really, really nifty to see. So I stopped on my way there. My next big stop was Jarvis Bay. So I've always loved Jarvis Bay. It is one of my absolute favourite places to visit. It has the most beautiful beaches. It has the most beautiful sands. The campgrounds are really, really nice. It's not really too expensive. It's quite a cheap stop. I mean, if you're staying there for longer, sure. But I love it. Absolutely love going there. So highly recommend to anyone that does stop by. If you're lucky enough, apparently you can get the bioluminescent water. I haven't been lucky enough as of yet, but fingers crossed, I will keep going past every chance I get, and I'll keep going past every chance I get, and hopefully one day I'll get the bioluminescence. So from there, I kept heading south. So the next one, so I stopped and stayed for a night in Bateman's Bay. That was a lot of fun. It was really, really nice. Just cute little bay with all the boats. Really small town, but lovely to visit. From there, I actually went to Mogo Zoo, where I had the opportunity to hand feed a giraffe. It was so awesome. I loved it. It was, highly recommend. I know that they almost shut down after the fires, so it was really good to actually go and support the zoo. I'm not a huge zoo fan, but I do like this space and the areas that they've created for their animals. It is a little bit different, but yeah, highly recommend if you are headed through just to stop there. From there, my next stop is always Narooma, so I always, if I'm traveling down the coast, I'll stop in and have a look at the seals that are lying, like they're just sleeping and existing on the rocks. Please be careful, there are some that are at the top. They don't like people. They are wild animals. Keep your distance, don't be stupid, and just admire them from afar and keep your children within arm's length. The amount of times that I've seen these seals like have a go at kids because they've gotten too close. Just be smarter, please be smarter. So after Narooma, I always head down to Bermagui. Absolutely adore the Bermagui blue pools. One of my favourite places to go for like a morning sunrise swim. There never seems to be anybody there when I go. Granted, I never go in peak summer, so maybe it's just too cold for everybody else, but I love it. And if you go off to the side, you can see the seals in the water. They seem to always be there, just like play and float and exist. So, such a good spot. So from there, I just keep heading south. So I think the next stop was in Maribula, was where I stayed overnight. Along the way, there's rock pools just outside of it. I think the Tura rock pools. Highly recommend that spot as well. It's just a really great stop. And then following the road down, I did end up crossing the border finally into Victoria, where my first night stay was Malakuta. Wasn't the best, to be completely honest. I stayed in a hotel. I was like, I'm going to get out of the car for a night because it was freezing by this point. But the hotel I was in, there was about this much of a gap under the front door. The windows didn't shut properly. It was just freezing. It was so cold. It would have been warmer in the rooftop tent, to be completely honest. So yeah, don't recommend, but the area is lovely. I think it would have been better if I had access to like a boat to go through the little rivers and everything, but even just from the shore, it was a nice spot to stop. So the next stop, I stayed for a night in Marlow and had a look at Orbost, just a quick drive through, and then I stayed at near Lake Tares. So the Victorian government actually has like free camping set up, and this free camp was so nice. It was like next to the beach. There was like a bit of a sandhill you kind of went over, but otherwise it was basically next to the beach. Absolutely insane, super stunning, and it was free. It was a bit of a drive in there. It was a fun drive in there, and I think there was one other couple that was there. I mean, yeah, there's spots for fire, like you can have a little fire. There are kangaroos and wallabies and everything running around. It was great. From there, I made it all the way around to Wilson's Prom. So Wilson's Prom is probably one of my absolute favourite spots I've stopped. It was so pretty. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't very good, and I was only there for like a day or a bit. But it was so cool. I have to admit, the night that I did stay there at the camping ground, I thought I was being broken into. but it turns out it was actually just like a wombat. It was like a little wombat. It was only maybe this big, and it was like scratching itself on like the running boards of the car. I was terrified. Like, I honestly thought someone was climbing in because my car was just rocking back and forth, but it ended up only being in like a wombat, but it was also like a baby wombat. So like, I don't know, I think the idea of that is just absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. I don't know. So while in Wilson's Trauma, apart from my like wombat encounter, I did come a couple of the walks, went down to some of the beaches. It's just a stunning area. I definitely think I need to plan like a week to actually have a look at things properly, and then go on like the proper like hikes they have, because I was only there for a day. I didn't do any of the big hikes, plus like the weather wasn't great, so it was a little bit hard, but definitely on my list to go back to, because it was stunning. Like, it's an absolutely beautiful area, and especially now at the moment where Victoria Parks does have the free camping sites, like everything's free for the next 6 months. Highly recommend anyone that has the opportunity to go down there. Even in winter, it was a bit chilly, but it was honestly really, really, really lovely. So cannot recommend more. From there, I actually did head straight into Melbourne. I visited family in Mount Eliza and visited a couple of friends in the city. I got invited out to a dinner on Phillip Island, so I made the most of that and stayed there for a couple of days. Did the 3-in-1 day pass, which is for the koala conservation area, for Churchill Island, and for the penguins. So highly recommend. It's the most price saving option. Highly recommend. Super, super, super awesome. And it did all in one day. It worked out really, really well. And then so I started with the conservation, then did Churchill Island, and then went back to like the walks around the top where the penguins and the penguins holes are. And after that went to the penguin parade. It was really, really cool. I personally didn't get very many penguins up close to me, but that was just my choice of where I sat. Regardless, seeing them off in a distance was really cool, and you actually could still see them when you were like walking back up to the car park. You could still see like the last couple of stragglers just like walking in and going up their little hills, so you did get to see them quite close considering they were just off the boardwalk. But yeah, highly recommend, highly, highly, highly recommend, because it's just so lovely. And I was really, I say fortunate, it wasn't the best of situations, but the next morning I had actually pulled over because there were like the cute geese and the little baby fluffy geese. And so I was taking photos of them, and it was next to this lovely lookout. So I was at this lookout and I was looking down like the path to the beach, and I saw a little black thing on the sand, and I was like, oh, that looks like a penguin. That's a bit weird. They're not supposed to be out during the day. And so I kind of like walked down, and it was 11 o'clock in the morning, but you could see from the lack of human footprints that nobody else had like walked down yet. And I go down and I see this penguin who is like a bit of like an inflamed like face, like it's a bit swollen. I was like, oh, this one looks injured. It wasn't moving. It wasn't really responding much. Like, it was kind of just existing. I could see that it was alive. So I call help. So like the animal help on the island, and they were really, really quick. They were there within like 10 minutes. Came and like very gently kind of grabbed it, put it in a box, and like took it away to get looked after. So it'd obviously been attacked by something, but thankfully was still alive and still okay, and hopefully they were able to help him. But like for me, that was incredible, because although I kept my distance, it was really, really cool to see one like up close and like during the day, like in detail. And thankfully I also had my camera with me, so I got a couple of photos and a couple of shots of it. It's really interesting because like I got to see like the individual feathers, because I thankfully had my like big macro lens on, so I could see the individual feathers of this like baby penguins, because they're like this big. So I don't know, it was really cool. So I actually went up for a day trip up to Mount Donauwang, I think it is, with some old friends of mine that I hadn't seen in a really long time. And so we actually went up, and it happened to be on that one day there was snow on the mountain, and like enough snow that people were like tobogganing and everything. So we went up, and I spoke to some really lovely stranger about, he had his toboggan with him, and like he was obviously way more prepared than we were, and he was asking a bit questions. I was like, yeah, I'm from Queensland. He's like, oh, have you seen snow before? And I'm like, once or twice. Obviously many times because I lived in Europe. But he's like, oh, did you want to have a go? And I'm like, oh, like, no, you're on your way out. Like, don't worry about it. He's like, no, I'll come back up. Anyway, so the three of us got to go up and down on this lovely man's toboggan, and then he had a couple of goes, and I think he was just excited to like share it with someone because he then had a couple more goes, and he was planning on leaving an hour before, but he's like, nah, and then stayed longer, stayed with us. We had a great time, went for a walk around, just enjoying the snow. Honestly, it was such a fun day, and it was so unexpected. I'm gonna go for breakfast and then go up the mountain and have a look, and then it ended up being that much snow. It was so cool. It was really, really, really exciting. I did go up and spend some time in the Dandenong Ranges. I actually met a couple of people at the dinner I was invited to who were from the Rotary Club of Emerald and Surrounds, and they were doing a fundraiser, doing a barbecue at the Puffing Billy Train of Lights events. So every night for a month they were doing a barbecue, and I was like, hey, do you guys need like any help with this? Like, I'm here, I'm around, what can I do? And they're like, yeah, sure, you can come down, you can help on the barbecue. I was like, awesome, like, not a problem, happy to do so. And like, in turn, I got to have a look at this train of lights. You know, I got to have a look up close. I was there taking a video when it took off. I was there like while it was coming in with the billowing smoke and all. Oh, it was absolutely stunning to see the train that had been covered in lights, and like the light show that it did and lit up into the trees. Oh, it was honestly fantastic. And you know what? I will happily donate 3 hours of my time to cook sausages, because I mean, that's a fun job anyway, to like see this thing that I wouldn't have seen otherwise, because it was completely sold out months in advance. I didn't even know about it until I was driving into Melbourne, heard about it, and they're like, oh yeah, but it's sold out within 3 hours. And I was like, oh, great, so I'm not going to see it anyway. Well, whatever. But no, I ended up being able to see it, and it was really, really cool. So from there, I headed back on my way up to Queensland. I stopped in Beechworth on the way because you have to get some honey, and I wanted to visit Bilson's, and so I tasted a whole lot of their cordials and got to try some of their liquors and that sort of thing. Bought a couple of cordials to take home, which was fun. And then I stopped in Bright. So I'd always heard great things about Bright. It's a cute little town. Like, obviously it's a hub for skiing and snowboarding in the season, and I was there during like snow and skiing season, so it was very, very, very busy, very touristy, but it was really cool. Went up to a couple of different places, like up on the mountain, came back down, got my snow chains, went up to try and go up Third Bow. Unfortunately that day they did have a blizzard, so I got about halfway up and I was like, ooh, I'm not game. And then turned around, came back, dropped off the snow chains again, and then went to camp. I have to admit, that was probably one of the coldest nights. It was super rainy, it was like 2 degrees, I was in the tent, had the heated blanket on, but honestly, stunning area, highly, highly, highly recommend. I've said that for so many things now, but it was so beautiful, and this country is amazing. I recommend everything. But yeah, so from Bright, I stopped back in Canberra for a night, and then back into Sydney, met up with some other friends, and then from there I actually travelled the coastal route then back home to Queensland. I stopped in a couple of places, like I stopped in Byron Bay on the way, had a look at the lighthouse, but that last little bit, I've done that stretch so many times. But basically I got back home, and after this trip, so this was about 3 months worth of travelling, and then got back home and redid like everything, pulled everything out of the back, redid the design of it, moved the freezer to the other side, put the fridge in here, put storage next to the fridge, so I had actually like storage space in my kitchen, and redid a couple of things, and then set off again up north. So we basically legged it to Gympie, stayed in Gympie for a night, and then up to Gladstone, Boyne Tunham area. Stayed there for a couple of weeks, and we stayed in Calliope, camping there, and then I was lucky enough, I have a friend in Gladstone that I've known for a couple of years now from the Gold Coast. She was nice enough, I was able to go spend some time with her, like living with her. It was really fun. She has 2 dogs, and I've never really lived with dogs before. This is the first time, like the travelling with the boys and their puppies, and then like living with her and her dogs, and it's really kind of fun, as much as it's frustrating being woken up at the crack of dawn by two puppies jumping on your face. I complained, but I secretly loved every second of it. So, but yeah, so I was traveling with the two boys, and one of them has a boat. So I was lucky enough for a couple of times to be able to go out to the reef. The first couple of times we were just fishing, seeing what we could catch, and then kind of translated into more like diving and free diving and snorkeling. So I love being in the water as much as I love fishing, as much as I loved getting to learn more things about how to fish and how to do this and how to do that and what the best knot is and this sort of stuff. Like, I love being in the water. So for me, it was great when that transition happened, because it means I got to jump in, and ended up actually taking a hand spear. So I now have a hand spear in my repertoire of fishing gear. I didn't end up catching anything, unfortunately, or even getting close to spearing anything, because they're so quick. But just being in the water for hours and hours on end just makes me so happy. So I had the best time with that. Yeah, towards the end, of the time in Gladstone, I found it like the plans kind of just changed a little bit. So I made the decision to head off from traveling with other people, and I headed back south. I had good old family friend in Hervey Bay, and spent a couple of weeks there, just, enjoying the retirement village that Hervey Bay is, and just having a pool in the backyard and having, four walls around me again. That was really, really nice. Kind of recouped a little bit there, and then headed down to Gari. I spent 10 days on the island, loved it. It was the first time actually taking my baby like proper off-road. That wasn't like a track that I wasn't expecting to do. It was like proper, like I knew that I was going to be on sand off-road the whole time, and it was awesome. I met a lovely guy, like not even before I got on the barge, and we were just having a quick chat and talking about this, and then ended up going across to the island. We were driving together, dropped him off at his campsite. He was going to pick me up in 2 days, and we were going to go through Nagala Rocks together, because a couple of people were a bit concerned about just doing it by themselves. So I was like, that's fine. Meet me here, like this is where I'm camping, pick me up in a couple of days, and we're good to go. I dropped him off at his campsite, got to mine, sit down, relax. 10 minutes after I arrived, some guy pulls into like my campsite, and I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, there are so many campsites. What is this dude? What is this wanker doing in my campsite? Like, pick one of the others. And then I see this guy like frantically waving at me, and I'm like, wait a minute. I know this wanker. I know this guy. And I'm like, oh, yay, hi. Anyway, pulls up, unpacks his stuff, and then gets his chair and sits next to the neighbours that had just set a fire, like in the middle of camp, and starts chatting to them. And then all of our plans change. Like, everything changes. We change their plans, we change my plans, we change his plans, and then we all go up to Nagala Rocks together. We go up through, because they were worried. There was no need to be worried. It rained, so it was super compact. There was no issues. Anyway, all went up together, walked up to the lighthouse, came back, and then next day, changed all of our plans, went to the camping grounds there, stayed there. They all went off the island, and I obviously continued the rest of my trip, because that was the first 3 days. Had an amazing time on Gari. I love every second of it. It is the most beautiful place, and depending on the corner of the island you're on, everything is different. But I'll get into that. I'll go into more detail about my Gari trip, because it was insane. But yeah, from there, then stopped in Gympie again for a night at a friend's, and then went home. After that, I've just been like tweaking things on the car. I have been finalising things. I've been helping Mum and Dad pack up the house and pack up everything we've ever owned into boxes, into removalists to go on their trip. And they left a couple of weeks ago, and now I've started mine. Again, like I said, there's nothing there left. So spent a couple of weeks around the Gold Coast, hanging with some friends, catching up with people, and like saying goodbye, doing some fishing, having a great time. But yeah, now I'm officially travelling. Officially have no home, no address at the moment. So it's interesting being in this kind of limbo. But yeah, that's a very quick, not quick rundown of everything that's happened, catching you up to date. And yeah, so I'm actually currently in Lismore. I did just recently cross the border into New South Wales in Lismore at a lovely friend's place who is letting me stay and do all of my washing and like get myself sorted before I like head off. But yeah, that brings us to now. Let's see what the future holds. I'm headed south. That is my only plan so far, is south. But we'll see. We shall see. We shall see. We shall see. Come along. Or not. I don't care. If you want to, you're welcome to. I look forward to it either way.